Hi gang, I'm going to go over some things in C#, and we'll talk a little bit about a project from Module 1. So this is what we've got by default using system. System is a namespace. Think of it like a warehouse full of resources that we can use. Well, we don't use them directly, we just make copies of them for us to use. So they're classes of code that we're going to make copies of to use with however we want to. And in system are a number of classes. We'll deal with that here in a little bit. This is a class that we're creating called program. Don't change that name. Once it creates it, it expects to see it again. In our class is a main method. It's public, so it has access from outside. Static, there's only one. It's not returning anything, so it's void, and we're going to pass it these string args. This is the standard that we use time and time again. All right. So with that said, console.writeLine, quotes, hello, and I'll end that statement with a semicolon. If I run this, it's going to look in system, find the console class, and invoke the writeLine method and pass it the word hello. And that then is displayed in the console. Now, that first assignment, we had to take this and do it on two separate lines, didn't we? We run it, and we get two separate lines of output. WriteLine. It terminates the line, sends it down to the next line, waiting for the next statement to take place. So there's hello and world. The only thing missing here are some comments. So we could put in here comments up at the beginning. Or Cop2360 Module 1, who wrote it, when, why, and then put comments in the code itself to explain what's happening. So this one's pretty straightforward. It's a fairly easy assignment. But what if we didn't want to have to put this console here? Can we work around that? Well, yeah, we can work around it. And there's times I say, well, there's no real console in system. Well, there is a console in system. I'm funny about having you use it because if we use it, we've got to be particular how we use it. I try to say C-O-N-S-O-L-E. It doesn't recognize it. All right, it doesn't recognize it. If I try to run it, it's going to throw me an error. We'll just run it to see what it does. I know it's going to throw me an error because by default, it doesn't want you creating more than one console for the users to interact with. So we need to put static in here so that we only have one. We don't have 3 or 4 different consoles popping up for the user to interact with, and they don't know which one, and they're not sure where the output is or where. Just keep it simple, and we'll just have one. So since we have static, there's only one, and it'll let us do that. We don't have to explicitly put console dot on each one of these invocations of these methods. So that's, or we're calling those methods. Now, there's the display part of it, that's WriteLine, and then there's readLine, which is the other side. So this is that first project. So let's say we're going to go look at Module 2 assignment. Break this up, and I'm going to say enter a whole number. Give me a whole number. I don't want to write line. I just want to write. I want it to sit there and wait afterwards. So if I run this, What's going to happen? Enter a whole number. And then it jumped down to the next line. How do I make it stop right there? Well, what I'm going to do is, after that statement, I want to read the line. And essentially what this is in that console class again. There's a read line method. It's going to read until it hears the enter key has been pressed. And that signifies the end of the line. It receives whatever keystrokes took place until the enter. We've got to put it somewhere. And where we're going to put it is, I'm going to create some variables and a constant. So I'm going to create a constant. It's going to be an integer. And I'm going to call it total. And I'm going to initialize it with a value of 0. Now, wait a minute. No, it's not total. I want the denominator from a calculation. That's what I want as a, and I don't want it as 0. I want it as 3 because it's going to be our, no, it's not the denominator, it's the divisor. There we go. The divisor will be 3. That's what we divide by. We're going to have an int that is the total. Give it a value of 0. We're going to have a running total of the numbers that are entered. If they're giving me whole numbers, the total of the whole numbers is a whole number. So that'd be an integer. And then I'm going to have, oh, that's not an integer. We're going to have a double. At the end, we'll call it AVG. We'll put a 0 in there for now. So we've got this code. We've got 3 things. If I run it now, it'll do the same thing that it did over here, with the exception that it'll throw us 3 warnings. Hey, you declared something and initialized them, but you never used them. It's going to hang up here waiting for us to input something, but we don't have anywhere to put it. So, all right, what I want to do is I'm going to take total equals whatever they give me. Well, wait a minute. They're going to give me a string of characters. Every time they enter a key on the keyboard, that is a character, keystroke. So I'm reading in a string of characters. I need to convert that, excuse me, to an integer. I can do int or int32. Let's do int. And we're going to parse it, which means go look character by character and take that string and turn it into an integer. And store it in total. I want to take those lines of code and I want to repeat them a few times. So now if I run this, I should get my 3 warnings, and then it should tell me enter a whole number. There's my warnings. Oh, I've got 2 warnings because I actually used total. Enter a whole number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They're not fractionals. And then it output world down at the end. Well, instead of world, I want to know what's in total. Let's run that, and that'll tell us what's in total, right? So what's in total when it's all said and done? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Add them up. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't add them up, so I need to take care of that, don't I? I didn't add them up. I just overwrote it each time. So I take that and I put it in. This next time I want to add to it. So plus equals. Total plus equals int.parseReadLine. What that essentially says is total equals total plus whatever you just read in. We'll do the same thing down here. That way we're not overwriting what's in there, we're just adding to it. Now let's see what we got. And it'll go ahead and run for us. Our whole number, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1,368. So it is accumulating for us. It's doing what I want it to do. Excuse me. Aside from that, I want to put a comment in here. Average calculation. All right, so what's the average? The average is AVG equals total divided by divisor. And the statement, I already know that total is what I want it to be at that point, so let's put AVG down there. Let's see what comes up with AVG when we run it. And instead of doing those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I'm going to actually use smaller numbers that I know will result in a fraction. So 1, 1, and 2. So that's going to be 4 as my total divided by 3, and that's a fraction. But it didn't come out as a fraction. Why didn't it come out as a fraction? Well, it didn't come out as a fraction because a whole number divided by a whole number, in computer's perception, is a whole number. Even though in reality, the way we look at it, that's a fraction. We need to what's called a typecasting. So I want to put parentheses here in front. And what I want to put in there is the word double. So essentially what I'm saying is divide total by the divisor, whatever the total of what's been input, by 3, convert it to a double, and put it in average. Now, just because I said that storage location of a double, of average, is a double, doesn't mean everything that's in there is a fractional number. Let me show you. I'm going to cut this out for a second, and I can put it back in easy enough. So it'll run 1, 1, 1. 3 divided by 3 is going to be 1. That's a whole number, right? It's a whole number. So it's actually putting a whole number in there. That's right. If I typecast this and run it, do the same thing. I want it to come up with a whole number. 1, 1, 1. Oh, wait a minute. I told it I wanted it to be a double. It displayed. Now we got to check and see. Is it actually working? Is it converting it to a double? Typecasting, I should say. 1, 1, 2. It is. So it's doing what I want. That typecasting's taking place. But if what's being typecast as a double isn't a fractional number, we can still treat it as a double, but it's not going to display any fractionals if they don't exist. So this typecasting, there's a couple of ways to go about it. I can use, there's a convert class, convert.toDouble. That'll convert it to a double. That's one way. I can do it this way. What if I made total a double, that would solve it too. A double divided by an integer will yield a double. So that's another way to go about it. But the easiest way, and the way that I want you to get used to, is this double in front, typecasting, which essentially is saying take whatever's there, convert it to a double, and store that in average. The last thing that we would have to do in here is going to be the output, getting the output straight. The average of the numbers entered is, and I need to put this in quotation marks. Can I do this? Have it just display average? What'll happen there? So output a string and a number, which is a double. Let's see what it does. Well, it didn't. It didn't do it. Nothing got put out there. Nothing happened. Let's see. What I need to do is, right in here before the closing quotation mark, I'm going to put a curly brace, with a 0 and a curly brace. And what that's essentially saying is, take this string of characters, along with this little placeholder I've got, and display that. Now the placeholder is essentially saying, go find whatever is after the comma and take that value, convert it to a string, and output it with the rest of this stuff for me. Well, if I run it, let's see what it does. And I'll do that same fractional that I did before with the 1, 1, 2. 1, 1, 2. So it's actually working for me. It's taking average, converting it to a string, and displaying it for me. So it's performing some kind of conversion for me. What if I had two numbers I wanted to put in there? I'll say total as well. Space. Total is 1. So placeholder of 0 and a placeholder of 1. That's the index of that list that's created there. And it's not sensitive to spacing here, but it is sensitive to spacing within the string itself. So now if I run it, put those same numbers in, it's going to say the average of the numbers is 1.3333. The total is 4. Use this methodology here to include data of different types to be output to the console. You don't have to worry about changing it. It happens for you by doing it this way. Because I just did a double and an integer. I didn't have to convert it. It converted it for me. All right. So the thing that we would have to go in here after the fact is put our comments in. Declare variables and constants. Variables start out with lowercase. Constants are all uppercase. I defined it as a constant and what the data type was, and we initialized each one of these values. We put something in them. And we may not have to, but we did just to make it happen. All right. We didn't have to put console in there because we did it up here. We parsed, read the characters, and converted that into an integer, and then added that to whatever was in total. We assigned it to total here. And then we performed this calculation, and what took place there in that double typecasting was we took whatever this was and converted it to a double. Treat it like a double, so that when it gets to average, it is an actual fractional number. Make sure you've got comments in here. And down here, no, this wasn't required, so we're not going to put that in. It was just so you could see the index. In programming and in computers, you start counting with 0. You don't start counting with 1. So the index within a string, the index within an array, the position within a list starts at 0. Second position is 1. Third position is 2. It may seem confusing because it's not what you're used to, but we start counting in 0. Right, so when I run this, we should be fairly straightforward with this. And I'll go ahead and do the 1, 1, 2. Boom, there we go. Now, do you have to do this typecasting like this? No. You can do the convert.to double, but you need to make sure that you go about it a little bit differently to where you're including the convert. There's different ways to change the data type, and we call that typecasting. There's not just one way to typecast. This is the easiest way to do this one. We can go to stackoverflow.com, ask questions. What's the easiest way to typecast in C#? You'll find a plethora of results and all kinds of discussions. Stack Overflow is a great resource. Okay. So with this said, I'll see you in another video.